So, in order to support my family, while Joanne was unable to work, then I, of course, had to have part-time jobs, and I had worked at Comf Motors as a Hey-U mechanic, and had to leave that job when my shift was changed at work. In the military, I had changed to a different shift. So I took another job, and I worked at the Apple Tree Shanty, and my title was third chef, which sounds very fancy, but actually there was 3 of us. And one chef prepared their specialty, which was ribs, and the other chef prepared all the other food, and my position as third chef was that I simply arranged the food on the plates and set them out where the waitresses could pick them up. So I worked at Apple Tree Shanty in the evenings, and had to get up at about around 4:30 in the morning to go to work for the military, because my shift there started at 6 a.m. and so then I would get off about 3 p.m. and then I would go home, get a little bit of rest, and go into work and get home about midnight. And so I didn't get too much sleep, and I lost weight there because working with food that much, I just didn't want to eat. But that was where I worked, at Apple Tree Shanty. And many years later, in Denver, we went back to Apple Tree Shanty, and I walked in and I immediately smelled the sauce that they had for the ribs was very prevalent. And so I had never eaten ribs while I worked there. We were served other food, not the specialty of the house. And so I'd never actually eaten their ribs. So I told the waitress, that I had worked there 20-some years before that, and I'd never eaten the ribs, and she looked at me like, yeah, so what? Oh well, at least I finally did get to eat the ribs at Apple Tree Shanty.
And were they good?
Oh yes, very good. Well, when I got out of the military, I did not have a job, but within about a week, then a representative from UNIVAC came around recruiting, and so I interviewed and got a job with UNIVAC, and so I had to go to school training in Utica, New York, and so the idea was that Joanne was going to stay in Denver with Phil for a short period of time while I drove to Utica in our car, our VW that we had, and so I went on to Utica to start training, and right after I left, Phil came down with pneumonia and had to go to the hospital. Since I wasn't in the military anymore, and my new medical insurance had not started yet, then we were without medical insurance, and Phil had to go to the hospital, so Joanne had the job of taking Phil to the hospital.
The doctor said they thought what might have started it was, we were packing things up and the dust and everything, and that you being so young, that might have irritated your lungs and brought on whatever it was, the pneumonia. So at the hospital, I had to sign papers guaranteeing payment before they would take you, since I didn't have insurance. So I went back down to the bank that I used to work at and talked to the loan officers that I worked for there, and they didn't even let me finish telling the story, and they were handing me the money, here, go take care of them, So I was fortunate in that respect, in that here we were, 2 kids that didn't have any money really, but I think the bank knew we would pay it, so they gave me the money. I took Phil to the hospital and stayed with him, and they put him in a tent and took care of him, and kept him there for about a week, and I stayed right with him.
And we had to borrow more money, so we borrowed money from a friend of mine in the military, and of course one of the rules in the military, I mean the common sense rule, is if a friend of yours is getting out of the military, don't loan them anything because you'll never see it again. But they loaned us the money, and we paid it back in about 6 months, and so we were honest about that. Mm-hmm. So.